Perhaps you will consider this one of the stranger entrance examinations. Some of you think, oh, this past week school started, or next week it's about to start, and you didn't want me to talk about school. You wanted to come as a rest from school. But this examination fascinates me. In the Middle Ages, a young man came to study with one of the most celebrated physicians of the time. And medical school then was just to go and follow the doctor and learn from him. So he arrives at the clinic, and the doctor assigns him the work of studying a fish. Yes, there was a fish in the little bowl, and it would go back and forth, and the doctor said, "Please draw what you see." And all day long, the doctor left him. Day one, the entire day, the doctor left him sitting at that table with the little fish in the bowl. Draw what you see. And of course, the young man drew, and the doctor was not impressed. Day two, he comes, and the doctor sits him down at the same table and points to the same fish. Draw what you see. Day three, and the young man is beginning to get really frustrated. I came to study medicine. I came to study how to help people, and all you want me to do is draw fish. But on the afternoon of day three, suddenly he began to notice the details in the fish that he had never seen before. And now the quill went much faster as he added in many details to his picture that he had not seen. And just as he is getting really excited with all of these new details, the physician says, "Now you're actually ready to learn." This morning, I'm going to ask you to look at the fish with me. I'm going to take up a topic that we are very familiar with, and some of you will be ready to fall asleep. But I would like you to look with me at the details in the fish. We're gathered here, after all, on a Sabbath morning. After how many Sabbath mornings that we've come to church? In fact, probably all of us are so fully accustomed with the Sabbath. What would there be more to think about on such a topic? But I want to look this morning at some of the biblical stories about the Sabbath and see if, like that young man, we can find some more details in the fish. I'm starting with where we are introduced to the subject in the Bible. Yes, if you study it theologically, it comes from creation. It's there since the beginning. But the first story we really come across, where it's discussed in detail, is in the 16th chapter of Exodus. Let's read it together. Exodus chapter 16, and I'm beginning in verse 19. I'll pause just a moment while you actually look it up. I'm backing up to verse 16 rather than 19. This is the thing which the Lord hath commanded. Gather of it every man according to his eating, an omer for every man according to the number of your persons. Take ye every man for them which are in his tents. And the children of Israel did so, and gathered some more and some less. And when they did meet it with an omer, he that gathered much had nothing over, and he that gathered little had no lack. They gathered every man according to his eating, and Moses said, "Let no man leave of it till morning." Apparently, there was not supposed to be leftovers. Some of you cooks don't like that idea. Moses said, notwithstanding, they hearkened not unto Moses, but some of them left it until the morning, and it bred worms and stank, and Moses was wroth with them. And they gathered it every morning, every man according to his eating. When the sun waxed hot, it melted. Now you know what they did every morning for 40 years. You think you have to get up and go to work and it's a boring routine? You didn't eat if you didn't get up early enough and go to pick up breakfast and lunch and dinner. And it came to pass that on the 6th day they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for one man, and all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. And he said unto them, This is that which the Lord hath said, Tomorrow is the rest of the Sabbath unto the Lord. Bake that which ye will bake today, seethe that which ye will seethe, and that which remaineth over, lay up for you to be kept until the morning. And they laid it up till the morning, as Moses bade, and it did not stink, neither was there any worm therein. It's a simple story, and it involves food that we all love and are accustomed to in our daily routine, and yet in this simple story of food is the Sabbath. Can I use a pun and say baked into it? Every week, the Sabbath was baked into their food experience. Moses said, Eat that today, for today is a Sabbath to the Lord. Today ye shall not find it in the field. 6 days ye shall gather it, but on the 7th day that which is the Sabbath, in it there shall be none. And it came to pass there went out some of the people on the 7th day for to gather, and they found none. And the Lord said unto Moses, How long refuse ye to keep my commandments and my laws? Now, perhaps some of you are more mathematically minded and you've thought about this already. How many weeks are there in 40 years of wandering in the wilderness? I'll give you a moment to calculate. For those who don't find it as easy to calculate, I'll help you out. There were 14,600 days in 40 years. That is 2,080 weeks or 480 months. So now, let's appreciate the story here. For 12,520 days, if you brought the manna home and kept it until tomorrow, it spoiled. 12,520 times. But for 2,080 times, you brought the manna home, and it was good the next day. You see, we often think of this story once because it's there in Exodus chapter 16, and then we forget about it. We forget that in Joshua 5, it tells when they crossed the Jordan River. And it says, there after the Jordan River, they ate the corn, the grain of the land, and the day after they ate that corn, manna stopped and never came again. In other words, there was a generation that grew up in the wilderness because all of the adults died off, right? All the old people died off. All the young people grew up. The only world they knew was a world in which Sabbath was there. You couldn't even think about rejecting the concept of the Sabbath because you would go hungry. It was built into the character of the Israelite people for 40 years, for 2,080 weeks. Why would God take something and make it so important that your daily diet was a lesson in Sabbath keeping? What was it about the Sabbath that meant so much to God that he didn't just introduce it for a week, he introduced it for a lifetime? Well, God himself explained it. Let's read together in Deuteronomy chapter 5. Deuteronomy chapter 8. All the commandments, it says in verse 1, which I command thee this day shall ye observe to do, that ye may live and multiply, and go in and possess the land which the Lord sware unto your fathers. And thou shalt remember all the way which the Lord thy God led thee these 40 years in the wilderness, to humble thee and to prove thee, to know what was in thine heart, whether thou wouldest keep his commandments or no. And he humbled thee and suffered thee to hunger, and fed thee with manna, which thou knewest not, neither did thy fathers know, that he might make thee know that man doth not live by bread only, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of the Lord doth man live. You've heard this verse, I'm sure. We've discussed it many times when it comes to the temptation of Jesus, as John read a few minutes ago. But in that routine of manna, which God said was a test to see if they would actually obey his word or not, what was his word that was tested in regard to manna every time? What was the frustration of God in Exodus 16? When they went out to gather on Sabbath, he said, won't they obey my commandments? In Deuteronomy 8, when it's discussing manna, part of the command that it's discussing there is, would they keep the seventh-day Sabbath? That was part of the manna test. That was part of God's lifestyle with us. I wish that the Israelites were so good as to continue this lifestyle as long as they existed. Unfortunately, they didn't. Along the way, it reaches the point that they have to be reminded of the value of the seventh-day Sabbath. Jeremiah 17, verses 19 to 27. Jeremiah 17, beginning in verse 19, thus saith the Lord unto me, speaking to Jeremiah, go and stand in the gate of the children of the people, whereby the kings of Judah come in, and by which they go out, and all the gates of Jerusalem, and say unto them, hear the word of the Lord, ye kings of Judah, and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem, that enter in by these gates. Thus saith the Lord, take heed to yourselves, and bear no burden on the Sabbath day, nor bring it in by the gates of Jerusalem, neither carry forth a burden out of your houses on the Sabbath day, neither do you any work, but hallow ye the Sabbath day as I commanded your fathers. But they obeyed not. If you continue to read the chapter there, in fact, Jeremiah is asked to tell them, to promise them that they will be destroyed as a people if they fail to keep the seventh-day Sabbath. A few years later, they went into captivity, demonstrating they failed to take his warning. I could go on at length, but I'll use one or two more stories and one more story in the Old Testament, and then we'll look at the New, and then we'll come to some conclusions. Nehemiah chapter 13. Nehemiah chapter 13, beginning in verse 15. In those days I saw in Judah some treading wine presses on the Sabbath, and bringing in sheaves and lading asses, and also wine grapes and figs, and all manner of burdens, which they brought into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. and I testified against them in the day wherein they sold victuals. There dwelt men of Tyre also therein, which brought fish and all manner of ware, and sold on the Sabbath unto the children of Judah and Jerusalem. Then I contended with the nobles of Judah, and said unto them, What evil thing is this you do, and profane the Sabbath day? Did not your fathers thus? And did not our God bring all this evil upon us and upon this city? Yet you bring more wrath upon Israel by profaning the Sabbath. And it came to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark before the Sabbath, I commanded that the gates should be shut, and charged that they should not be opened till after the Sabbath. And some of my servants set I at the gates, that there should be no burden brought in on the Sabbath day. And he tells the story how the merchants came again a couple times, and he chased them away. He had to place his own servants to work on Sabbath to keep them from coming to break the Sabbath. But his greater point, that the Sabbath was something that they had been punished for breaking, and they should continue to keep it, should not be lost on us. So in the old experience of Israel, the Sabbath was so critical, so valuable to Jesus, that he went out of his way to point it out to them on a number of occasions. But after the captivity, after they returned to Jerusalem, the Sabbath was something that they kept, right? All the way until Jesus came. And we find Jesus come, and now they're every Saturday in the synagogue. Except that the way they keep Sabbath is now the problem. It's not whether they keep it, it's how they keep it is now the issue. A couple stories, and then we'll reach our conclusions. I'm reading from Luke chapter 13. Luke chapter 13 begins with the experience of Jesus in church on Sabbath, and he is teaching there. Verse 10, he was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath, and behold, there is a woman which had a spirit of infirmity 18 years, and was bowed together, and could no wise lift herself up. That sounds like a difficulty. And when Jesus saw her, he called her to him and said unto her, Woman, thou art loosed from thine infirmity. And he laid his hands on her, and immediately she was made straight and glorified God. Now that's a spectacular story. But the story doesn't end there. The ruler of the synagogue answered with indignation, because that Jesus had healed on the Sabbath day, and said unto the people, There are 6 days in which men ought to work. In them therefore come and be healed, and not on the Sabbath. Oh, it's interesting. The minister gets up at the church and rebukes. Now you misunderstand. There's 6 other days that you can come and get healed. Don't even show up here if you are sick, for the chance to be healed. The Lord answered him and said, Thou hypocrite, doth not each one of you on the Sabbath day loose his ox or his ass from the stall and lead him away to watering? And ought not this woman, being a daughter of Abraham, who Satan hath bound, lo, these 18 years be loosed from this bond on the Sabbath day? And when he had said these things, all his adversaries were ashamed, and all the people rejoiced for all the glorious things that were done by him. Now Jesus is there not only to insist on the Sabbath. By the way, notice, Jesus didn't stand outside the synagogue and picket and say no one should go in. He didn't work in the carpenter shop on Sabbath. He was there in church. His objection was not to being there on Sabbath. His objection was to the formalism they practiced on Sabbath. A big difference. Similar story, Luke chapter 14. Came to pass, as it begins in verse 1, as he went into the house of one of the chief Pharisees to eat bread on the Sabbath day, that they watched him. And behold, there was a certain man before him which had the dropsy. And Jesus answering spake unto the lawyers and Pharisees, saying, Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath day? And they held their peace. They couldn't argue with him. And he took him and healed him and let him go, and answered them, saying, Which of you shall have an ass or an ox fallen into a pit, and shall not straightway pull him out on the Sabbath day? And they could not answer him again to these things. Why do I ask you to look into the details of the fish on something so familiar to us as the Sabbath day? I'd like to take your minds back to the very first Sabbath day on planet Earth for just a moment and answer to that question. When Jesus was creating this world, did he keep Sabbath? What was he tired from? So Jesus kept Sabbath even though there was nothing he needed to rest from. Or did he? And if I were to take your minds forward to the future, to when we are in heaven, what would we need to rest from every Sabbath in heaven? What, in fact, will a Sabbath be like in heaven if we are not tired and exhausted at the end of a hard work week? I submit to you this morning that Jesus rested or paused at the end of creation in order to enjoy what he had just accomplished. Let me repeat it. Jesus paused to enjoy what he had just done. That, in fact, is the meaning of Sabbath. God gives us every seventh day to pause and enjoy what he just did. Sometimes I'm afraid we get that confused and we fill the Sabbath with our own activities and observations. We fill it with talking with friends. We fill it with just sleeping because we're tired from work. We miss the fact that God rested to enjoy what had just been accomplished. And God gave that so that we could enjoy what he just accomplished. In fact, I will submit to you that back during the wilderness, that is why it was so important to him, because he wanted to spend that time with the Israelites. After all, God is a busy being. Now, we've come so used to always going to God whenever we want to that we don't stop to think that he's the one who said, I work 6 days and I'm resting the seventh to spend time with you. And so we expect on Wednesday or on Sunday to spend a lot of time with him focused on something when he asked us to give us his attention on the seventh day. But then I've come to appreciate God as a being, not just a force. All of you know God as a force. The one who creates things, the one who has power, the one who gives us the power to be alive on a daily basis. But do you actually know God as a being that you talk to and hear from on a day-to-day basis? Do you go through your day and partway through the day, oh, I recognize that's you, God? My own observation. God loves detail. How do I know he loves detail? How many cells make up your body or my body? It's not 10, it's not 100, it's not thousands of cells. We're talking millions of cells. Millions of cells that all have to function in a very intricate and complicated way. And yet God designed it and keeps it functioning. But God doesn't get lost in the details because you think that it's a handsome or a beautiful body that He created. We get the bigger picture and we enjoy the bigger picture. He enjoys the details and the beauty of the bigger picture. Look at space. How many planets go round? How many suns and moons go round? All of the detail that God pays attention to every day. And yet we look at the galaxy and say, oh, the beauty of it. Because God loves detail and beauty at the same time. When your life goes along and something fits together and you see all those details in a beautiful formation, was that not the work of God in your life? Have we paused on Sabbath to know Him as an individual being, not just as a force? To actually have such a friendship with Him that we wouldn't know what it is to not be with Him. There's a passage in the Gospel of John where Jesus is having an argument with the Pharisees, which the Pharisees like to do with Jesus. And Jesus says to them, if I said I did not know God, the Creator, I would be a liar like you are. We know about God, but have we come to know Him so well that if we said, I don't know Him, we would be a liar? I think about that sometimes. Have we in fact used the Sabbath for the purpose God gave it, or have we used it for our convenience? I close with that story that we began with when John was reading a few minutes ago. Jesus is there alone in the wilderness. And the devil comes to him and reminds him of the material world around him, just as our society reminds us. And in that very material moment, you need to eat, you are hungry, Jesus' response is, man shall not live. Oh, he's quoting that statement about the manna so long ago. Man shall not live based only on the material world. Man and women shall live based on the Word of God. I pray for you this morning that you and I will live by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God.